Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Do not. There is no try. Classic line.
Thanks, Michael.
Classic line.
Or should I say Yoda? So, if you've never seen the movie, I don't even know which Star Wars movie it is. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan.
I'm just trying to think of which one it is.
If you've never seen the movie, you won't know what we're referring to here. But there's a line where Yoda, who's this little green creature.
Empire Strikes Back, I believe.
People are going to be listening to this going, these guys are mad. They're literally talking about little green creatures and what they've got to say as it relates to retirement planning. But
The Empire Strikes Back, I think it was.
I think it might be, yeah. There's a scene where this guy being Luke Skywalker, is training and trying to develop these new skills, and he says, the guy, Yoda, the guy says, you need to do this. He goes, all right.
Jedi Master, mate.
Jedi Master.
Not the guy, the 800-year-old Jedi Master.
And so Luke Skywalker says, okay, I'll try. And then Yoda says, no, do or do not. There is no try. Now, and I actually really love this saying. And my theory on this is that the minute you say you're going to try to do something, I understand why people say it, and it's a pretty obnoxious thing to pull people up on, but I do it all the time anyway because that's just the way I am. But when you say you're going to try to do something, without realizing it, you've already created or you've laid the groundwork for that thing not to happen. And what I mean by that is your subconscious mind hears you say, I'm going to try to do that, and go, well, great, I've got a way out here. If this doesn't happen, I've always got that to fall back to. Go, well, I only said I was going to try. I didn't say I was going to do it. And so this is one that I look at a lot with people when, and we've talked about this before, is that for a lot of people, a part of their plan or their retirement, working towards their retirement goals is giving something up every week or every month. And what I realized is that you could pretty clearly draw a correlation between when you're talking to someone and say, okay, well, you need to put this amount into super every week, or you need to pay this much off your mortgage every week. The people who said, yep, okay, I'll do that, 90% of the time, they went and did that. The people who said, yep, we'll try and do that, and most of the time, they were just as serious about it. They really wanted to do that. But there's a huge percentage of those people who don't actually manage to stick to that for the next 6 months. And when we looked at it in their next review, they'd say, yeah, well, we did that for a while, or we couldn't stick to that, or we've done that some of the times, but not all the times. And there's obviously a big selection bias going on here where if people aren't really, if it's a bigger ask or a bigger amount they're trying to give up or a harder sort of a target, then they're more likely to say they're going to try because they know it's going to be an issue. But I really think that, and what I've started doing with my clients is working on a figure or on something that people either can do or not do, and really removing the whole concept of trying from people's vocabulary and from their plan. Does that sort of make sense?
Absolutely. So we use the term, the plan has to be realistic quite a lot. So it has to be a realistic plan. And sometimes, especially with a new client, they get super excited because you come up with a realistic plan and they say, I can do more. Yeah. And in many aspects, in fact, almost always, we actually have to hold them back and say, if all the stars aligned and maybe you could do more. Yeah. In everything that we know and every scenario that we've seen across, hundreds of families or 100 odd families that we look after. Yeah. All around your age, we know that this is doable. Yep. Any more than that is probably not doable. Yep. It's probably not doable in the long term, and I think that's the key.
And that's the danger. As to there, it's actually not about the next 6 months. It's about the habits that you form of being able to do the things that you say you're going to do. And so I would much rather, 10 years out from retirement, building the habit of, okay, we are going to do this for the next 6 months, and we have been able to do that, and we have consistently done it, and then we reassess in 6 months' time. And then we pick another amount or a target or another thing that we're going to focus on. We do that for 6 months. That's a more sustainable thing, both because it's realistic and we can plan on it actually happening, but also because what you find is that people only move in one direction. They only get more confident and more capable in their ability to do these things. Whereas if you try and bite off more than you can chew, what you actually do is you set yourself up for failure. And then when you aren't successful, when we're having that next review, instead of saying, whatever we decide to do for the next 6 months is what we're going to do, you've already set the scene for, well, we might do this, but it just depends on how things play out. So I'd much rather have something that, as you say, is realistic, is something that I know that on average people can easily stick to, and I'd rather have them. It's a bit like training. Sometimes you actually want people to be motivated and excited to get up and train the next day. So if you're new to exercise, you have to really build into some of these things slowly, because otherwise what happens is you go to the gym for 2 hours every day for the first week, and then you're laid up and can't get out of bed for the next 2 months. So what you're actually better off doing is just building up over time, so that you're not trying to extend yourself by more than what you can. And I think that's where I say it's sort of our job in a lot of those cases to know, to assess people, and based on what their history is, and even with new clients, you can normally get a pretty good read on what have people been able to sustainably do before, what are they going to be able to sustainably do, how can I get this person to do what they need to do and to stretch themselves as much as they need to and can to achieve that goal, but not try and overcommit to something that they're not going to be able to stick to.
Consistency is key as well. So, if it was ideal that someone put $1,000 a fortnight into their superannuation fund, but after assessing their income and knowing everything you know about people in a similar situation, you worked out that they could really only realistically do $500 a fortnight.
Yep.
They would be far better off doing $500 a fortnight, but sticking to it,
yes,
as opposed to doing $1,000 here, missing a fortnight, doing another $1,000 the following fortnight.
Yep.
What it lends itself to is all of a sudden it's easy to miss 2 fortnights out of every 3.
That's right. Yep.
Even though theoretically the same amount of money is going in.
Yep.
$1,000 a fortnight, but every second fortnight, because you're missing, you're leaving yourself too short, versus $500 every consistent fortnight, for the rest of your working life.
Yep.
Same amount of money, ultimately. However, it's the frame of mind, isn't it?
That's right.
So when you're missing those fortnights, all of a sudden it becomes easier to miss.
Another
one.
Yes.
And then another one, and all of a sudden you're out of the habit.
Yep.
That's training analogy is a good one because a big part of training is turning up.
Yes.
Is turning up. So you know that if you get out of bed and get to the boot camp, you're 99.9% likely to finish that boot camp.
That's right.
Versus not turning up inconsistently, of course. So
and that's I actually had this exact conversation with a client earlier this week around they've got a fair bit of spare cash flow and their focus is on paying down their home loan, and so we're looking at, based on their income, how much can they make in extra repayments. And these guys are in a really good spot. They can quite easily make an extra $5,000 a month in extra repayments, which is $60,000 for the year. And so what we actually did was we set up that regular transfer for that $5,000 a month. Now, there's actually a bit of a buffer there. There's a bit more probably than what they need that's going to be left in their bank account, and it's going to be building up in their offset account. And what they sort of said is, well, we can probably make more than 5, so should we get in and transfer more, or should we bump up the $5,000 a month? And what I said was, what I'd prefer to see is they just do the $5,000 a month for 6 months, and then where the position that they're going to be in 6 months' time is that they have definitely been able to do that, and we will be able to tell based on what's in their offset account is that can they sustainably build that up. Now, what I want though is I want that figure to only ever be going one way. Like if in 6 months' time we review that and go, well, actually they can make $5,500 or $6,000 a month, we might bump that up to $5,500. But what I don't want to do is and this is sort of what I think you touched on there, is that if we make $5,000 a month and we do that for a year, that's $60,000 that's coming off their home loan. Now, that's effectively a guaranteed $60,000 because I know they can do that. They know they can do that. That feels very easy for them. That's sustainable. I can almost guarantee that in 12 months' time, their home loan is going to have that $60,000 off it. Yep. Now, if they had pushed there and said, we think we can make $5,500 a month in those repayments, in 12 months' time, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to have $66,000 paid off their home loan, which is the $5,500 times 12, which is great. You know, that's $6,000 more than what it is. But what's more likely to happen there is that there will be a month where they just feel a bit cramped and a bit, and even the beginnings of that is that they would have set that transfer up and put that in place, and subconsciously they probably would have said, well, we'll try and make $5,500 every month. And then what you'd find is that after 12 months, there will be probably a couple of months missing within there. So rather than making 12 months at $5,000 a month, they would have made 10 months at $5,500. And so they would have made $55,000 in total repayments off that loan. But the two parts of that, as you just touched on, is that obviously they're $5,000 short of where they were going to be. But they also then, when we're looking at it and we're projecting at the next 12 months, their confidence is a bit shot because it goes from feeling like we can make $5,000 a month to, well, some months we can and some months we can't, and we just sort of play it by ear, and it's impossible for them to then feel confident and feel comfortable in that because it's a thing that sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. And then when we're also projecting out where are they going to be in future and trying to get motivated to see where they're going to be in 5 years' time, it's also very hard because I'm then saying to them, well, you might be here in 5 years' time, but it sort of depends on how many months you miss, and it sort of depends on this. And we all leave the meeting going, yeah, well, we'll just sort of see how things go. Whereas if I can dial them back that little bit and just say, you are going to make this amount of money, and you have been able to make this amount in extra repayments for 12 months, and you know that you can easily do that. So in 5 years' time, you are going to be here. That's a very different dynamic, and that's a very different feeling to for them leaving that meeting, and the motivation that they feel and the confidence that they have.
And by pushing themselves too far into the red, I believe that people become subconsciously claustrophobic.
Yep.
Great racehorse name, by the way. Add that to the list. But people. What I have actually seen, I have no way of proving this, and they wouldn't be able to tell me if I was right or wrong. But what I've seen people do is buy a very, very expensive toy that they don't need when they become subconsciously claustrophobic. And you become subconsciously claustrophobic by actually just pushing that amount up to unrealistic levels.
That's right.
And people end up saying, what are we doing this all for? Let's go and,
we want to enjoy ourselves.
We want to enjoy ourselves. Let's go and blow some money, or to hell with this plan. We're just gonna forget about it now. Like that's what I have seen.
No, exactly.
In the past from some people.
It's funny because you go to do it as you're role playing that. There's almost a body language that people, and it is like they're sort of shrugging their shoulders and they it's just all. It feels like the weight of the world is on their shoulders, and it's for the sake of, in this case, whether they pay their home loan off in 2 years or 2 years and 2 months. I'd much rather have them pay it off in 2 years and 2 months, but know that along the way they're not going to get sidetracked and they're not going to get sick of it because they feel just so jammed up and so claustrophobic. And so that's exactly what does tend to happen, is that you almost want it to be easier than expected rather than go the other way. And some of that is, again, going back to the analogy of us as a sporting coach, it's our role to know when to push in some capacity, when and when to try and convince that person to just ease off a little bit. So I think that's a key. But yeah, I'm if ever, this is a big one that you see with couples. Even the language around this is that if one member of a couple will say, yeah, we're going to do this, and the other person will say, yeah, we'll try. You go, hang on, there's something wrong here. This is. They think that they're speaking the same language, but they're really not, because one of them has fully committed to this, and one of them has not really, but they don't want to have the argument. And so I'd much rather break that back down to, okay, what is something that you can both confidently sit there and say, yes, we will do this.
Yeah, and you still come out with a great result, don't you? Like you said, if for this example that you're talking about, you get to the end of 12 months, which flies, time flies.
Yeah.
If they've stuck to the original amount, that's $60,000 extra that they've paid off their mortgage.
Yeah.
And assuming they were going to make that extra $500 a month, which is really only the difference between $60,000 and $66,000. Assuming they blow that $6,000, let's assume they do.
Yeah.
They don't feel as claustrophobic, and we're not telling people to go out there and, of course, and blow $6,000. But assuming that they did, but they feel great about themselves, and they feel great about the fact that they've stuck to that month in month.
That's right.
And there's $60,000 difference that they've made. That's a better result than actually pushing it too fine, pushing them into the red too much, and them getting sick of that feeling of being claustrophobic and canning it all.
That's exactly right. So, and again, another analogy, and I'm really only rolling this out mainly because every time we finish podcasting, Nicola, my wife, always asks me, did you talk about me today in our podcast? So the great analogy of this is I think we spoke about it recently, about her getting up and going and exercising in the mornings. And sometimes I'll say, are you exercising tomorrow morning? She goes, yeah, I'm going to try. Okay, and I know exactly what that means when she says that, which means I'm not getting up and going and exercise in the morning. So that's where this started. The do or do not. There is no try, and I think it's a great thing for people to remember as you're thinking about your own finances and your own situation. Is that anytime you find yourself saying that you're going to try to do something, be very mindful of, what do you actually mean by that, and what are the subconscious traps that you're setting for, or the fallback positions that you're setting for yourself, that rather than thinking I'm going to try to do this, maybe just reframe things and think of something that is sustainable, it's realistic, that I can confidently say I am going to do this.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.